Thank you. Like Nate said, my name is Brock, and I'm the Colleyville High School pastor. And this is actually my first time to the North Fort Worth location, and it is awesome. It's just a cool setup. And yeah, give yourselves a hand. That's awesome. That's so cool. And I have one goal today, and this is it. And I just want to help us close the door well on 2018. That's all I want to do. And I want to set Pastor Nate up for a home run next week as he kicks off 2019. And like he said, it's going to be a big year. But I want to make sure we give 2018 the reflection and the attention it deserves, because it's been a big year for all of us, right? And so I know for me personally, 2018 is a year I'll never forget. I'll never forget it. All in the same year. This is my wife and I. There should be a picture up there. Apparently I love this shirt, by the way, because I'm wearing it again. I didn't play in that, I promise. But all in the same year, we graduated college. We celebrated 1 year of marriage. We moved from Illinois to Texas. And then, gosh, what else we do? All kinds of stuff. I'm closing in on a year of full-time ministry. And so probably the only thing I haven't done this year that I wanted to get done, I still have time, is get cowboy boots. And I've been in Texas too long, and I haven't had cowboy boots. So I'll probably run to Boot Barn in the next couple of days and grab some cowboy boots, because that's one thing that need to happen. But you know, maybe you can think of those moments for yourself. It's just been a great, just a year I'll remember forever. Maybe you have some of those moments. Maybe it was a graduation, or maybe it was a wedding, or the birth of a child, a new job, a promotion. Or maybe it was just filled with some small, fond memories of maybe getting coffee with friends or lunch. Maybe it was getting through your book list or your Netflix list, right? You binging out on Netflix. Yes, we're all doing that this week off work. Are you getting through that list? Maybe it was playing a sport or going to college. Moments that really make us want to look back and thank God for 2018. But I know for me, there's also been moments that have challenged me beyond belief. I've missed my friends and family back in Illinois. I've learned how much I actually don't know as a leader and as a pastor, and despite thinking how much I did know. I encountered more heartache this year as a high school pastor, just seeing the challenges and pressures our high school students are facing every day. I've experienced that. I walked through the pain a family was facing during the trauma. Their son had taken his life the night before, and praying over his body as he was on life support in the hospital is a moment I'll never forget. Just those moments where I'm just like, I was challenged beyond belief. And I'm just being in the hospital with his family and praying for him, and it's just something I'll never forget, right? And so we have those moments too where we've been challenged probably more than we would have liked. And maybe that moment for you is the death of a loved one, or being let go from a job, or losing a promotion, or a bad breakup, or maybe seeing one of your kids walk down a road you didn't want to see him walk down, right? And so moments were like, I don't want to look back at those moments, but we do. And so whatever those moments are for you, I think we can all agree that it's important to look back and to reflect, to meditate on what happened, and to reflect on those moments before we just jump into the new year, because we had a crazy year, right? 2018 was a crazy year, and then if you're like me, you're like, 2019 is coming. We got to do all this over again, right? So how do we do that? And so one of those things is just we have to be able to look back. It's important to look back. But not every moment this year, or not every moment even in our own lives needs to be remembered. Let me explain. There are times when we need to leave what's in the past in the past. It might have been a time you've wronged someone, or someone wronged you. Maybe you were someone in the past you don't like looking back at. Maybe you've been called out of an old life and into a new one. Maybe there's a sin that you've left behind, but sometimes it looks harmless, so you think about it, you gaze upon it. There are things we need to leave behind. There are times when we don't need to look back. So there's a time to look back, and there's a time to not look back. I just want to just sit in that tension today. I want to kind of explain that, because here's what it says in Ecclesiastes 3. It says, there's a time for everything, and a season for everything under the heavens. So they know that tension of there's times to remember, times not to think about it. There's also an old Japanese saying, I don't know who wrote it, but it's a great quote. It says, memories warm you up from the inside, it says, but they also tear you apart. I think it describes that tension well. And so my question today is, when do we look back? When should we look back? And so there's just a few moments in Scripture I want to dive into. I just want to spend a brief amount of time on the first moment, and it's found in Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible. And so what's happening at this point in Genesis is God has told Abraham, look, you're going to be the vessel. I'm making a covenant with you. You're going to be the vessel through which I'm going to bless the whole world. And so he made that promise with them, and we see that playing out. And then we hear about two towns of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's a rather bizarre story if you've ever read it. God had told Abraham that he's going to destroy these cities because of their sin, because of their egregious, just outrageous sin. And so Abraham actually pleads on Sodom and Gomorrah's behalf. And he's like the master negotiator here. He's like, look, God, if I find 50 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah, will you spare them? And God's like, yeah. And then I think he looked around a little bit. He's like, okay, God, what if I find 40 people? Will you spare them then? And God's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, what about 30? How about 30 people? And God's like, yeah, of course. And then he gets them down all the way down to 10 people. He's like, if I find 10 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah, will you spare them? And God's like, sure. And then I think he realizes how difficult that was too. But if I'm looking for like negotiation type advice, I'm going to turn to Abraham because he got God all the way down from 50 to 10. And so here's what happens next. There's this scene where two angels go into Sodom and Gomorrah, and in this town lives a man named Lot and his family. And Lot and his family is one of those righteous men. I don't know if there was 10 of them, if Lot was the only one that was righteous. But here's what happens. Lot invites the angels to his house. He's a very great guy, very hospitable. And here's where the story gets weird, okay? And so the angels go into Lot's house, and then the people of the town, again, they're just outrageous, egregious, and they're not good people, right? And so they go to Lot's house and like, look, we want to be with the angels for the night, right? And Lot's like, no. And so he's like, I have to protect the angels. And hospitality was a huge deal at that time. He's like, but just take my daughters. But they're like, no, we want the angels. And so Lot's like, okay. So these people break into Lot's house, and then what happens is the angels strike all the townspeople blind. So they're all blind, and then the angels are leading Lot and his family out of the city. And as they're leading Lot and his family out of the city, here's what the angels instruct Lot and his family to do. They say, as you're walking out of the city, as it's being destroyed, don't look back. Don't look back. That's one request, do not look back. So there's this moment as they're leaving the city that we can read together. It's found in Genesis chapter 19. It says, then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. So he destroys the cities. He overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So I read this, I'm like, all she did was look back. Like maybe she was just trying to get a glimpse of God and just his power, and just kind of, maybe she was like, well, what's going on? I just need to see what's going on. And then before you know it, she's turned into our favorite popcorn seasoning, right? And I'm like, but not just a pile of salt, a pillar, like a monument of salt. Like I think she's like frozen as she looks back or something. But she's turned into a pillar of salt, which to me, I'm reading like, that's a bit extreme, right? That seems a bit extreme for just like glancing back. But the Old Testament was written in Hebrew originally, thousands of years ago. And I studied that word, the verb look, that she looked back. And again, when I read it, I was like, man, she just glanced back. She just got a glimpse of what was going on. But here's what that verb actually means. It says that she regarded, she considered, she paid attention to, she gazed at what was happening, as if she was longing, or she was missing, or she was sad at what was happening. And so as Lot's wife is being dragged free from her life of self-focus from that town and is set well on her way to freedom, she looks back longingly and lingeringly on her past. And that's what ultimately destroys her. So there is a time to not look back. When we're leaving a life that God has called us out of, don't look back. Don't look back. There are sins in our past we kind of gaze back at, like, man, part of me misses some of those people or what used to happen. But God says, I long to set you on a path to freedom, but oftentimes we long for what was. Paul, who wrote over half the New Testament, he explains this well. He says, just in different ways, he says, we fix our eyes on what is ahead of us. We focus on the race set before us. The old is gone, the new has come, and we focus on that. He says, don't look back at who you used to be. And so this also happens when Jesus, as he's starting out early in his ministry, he calls his first disciples, Peter and John. And here's what it says in Matthew chapter 4. He says, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. After waiting around a while, they left their nets and followed him. It says immediately they left their nets and followed him. Immediately. And he actually explains that they left their father standing in the boat. Can you imagine like the father like, they left their family business, their lives, their families, he's just like standing in the boat, like, where are you guys going? Like, I need you guys. But they leave that life. Jesus calls them out of that life and into a new life. And so I just can't imagine his reaction, because when we're called out of a life that doesn't bear fruit, we don't look back. So there's a time to not look back, and that's when we're leaving a life God's called us out of. But there is a time to look back. There is a time to reflect, and this is where I want to spend the majority of our time today, if that's okay. And so to do that, I want to direct us to another story. It's also in the Old Testament, and it's about a group of people who are really forgetful. Anyone here forgetful? Yeah, you're like nudging, you're forgetful. Like you forgot my birthday, right? And so some of us are very forgetful, so we understand, but this forgetful people, their history is full of moments when God went through extreme measures to free them and to call them his own. For example, when they were slaves in Egypt, God sent 10 plagues on Egypt because Pharaoh wouldn't let them go, like with locusts and gnats and all kinds of crazy things. And so he finally gets them out of Egypt. He was faithful there. He kept his promise. And then they get, as they're leaving Egypt, Pharaoh changes his mind, right? He's like, no, I don't want them to go. So he sends an entire army after the Israelites. And then they get to this huge body of water, the Red Sea, and like, this is it. Like, this is where we're either going to drown or be killed. And then what happens? God parts the Red Sea so they could walk through, and they escaped the Egyptians, and the Egyptians were swallowed up in the Red Sea, right? And so another instance of where God was faithful. And then he says, like, you'll know my presence. You'll know me by the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night as they're wandering in the desert. And then they're like, we're hungry. We need food. He's like, all right, there's manna, there's bread on the ground, eat as much as you like. But yet they constantly questioned God's faithfulness. They constantly wondered and questioned whether or not God would provide for them. But I think we do the same thing, right? We're so forgetful of what God's done for us. I remember I was in the barbershop this past week, and I'm sitting there getting my hair cut, and I notice a mom, and then she's got 2 kids in the waiting area of the barbershop. And the older boy was about 8 years old, and then she had a younger daughter, about 4 years old. And out of nowhere, I'm just talking to the barber, and the 4-year-old just like breaks down, like, oh my goodness. She's like, I'm hungry. Well, I'm hungry. When are you gonna feed me? And I'm like, same girl. It was dinner time. I'm ready to eat too. I get hangry too. And so she's having this huge temper tantrum in the middle of the barbershop. And the mom's like, when have I not fed you? Like, right? She's like, but like every time we get hungry, like you think of babies too, like they cry every time, they need the bottle, right? And so you're like, just hold on a second. So I'm sitting there in the chair at the barber, and I'm just thinking in my mind, Israelite, right? What an Israelite. But I'm like, I do this all the time too. And so this story I'm going to talk about, it's found in the book of Joshua. And Joshua records the culmination of Israel's journey into the promised land around 1400 BC. And so after 40 years of wandering into the desert, they're going to enter the promised land. This is it, baby, right? This is what they've been waiting for. But there's just this little body of water standing in between them. It's called the Jordan River. It's not very little. It's actually pretty huge. It's actually about... It was right next to a mountain, and so during flood season, all the water and snow from the mountain would go down to the river, and so it was like 10 to 12 feet deep, and then about 350 feet wide, so about a football field wide. And so they've got to get about 2 million people across the Jordan River, and they're like, I don't know how we're going to do this, right? And so here's what, in the book of Joshua in chapter 3, it's not on the screen. I'm just going to kind of explain it. If you want to turn there and make sure I'm telling the truth, go right ahead. It's in there, I promise. But there's some priests, and they're carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And this is where they believe that God's presence dwelled. And it says, as the priests touched their feet on the water of the Jordan River, the water stopped flowing. And it started to build up a wall right where they were going to walk through. And then the water on the other side, it had stopped flowing to the Dead Sea, which was just down the river. So the water stops flowing. So imagine this picture of just a wall just kind of building up as they're about to walk through, just as their feet touch the water with the Ark of the Covenant. And so the river's at its swiftest, deepest, and widest. And here's the huge thing. It says that the ground they were standing on was completely dry. Like it wasn't even wet or damp or anything. It was completely dry. It wasn't muddy, which is, for me, that's just amazing. And so it says they got through the river in about a half a day. 2 million Israelites crossed the river in about a half a day, which is, for me, that's awesome. That's so cool. That God, they're like, oh, wait, we remember something like this where that was the Red Sea, where he parted the Red Sea. So God did it again. And so I imagine the Israelites thinking, after 40 years in the desert, about to enter the promised land, this happens, and they're probably thinking, finally, God, my goodness, it's taken 40 years. Finally, you've come through for us in this way. And God's like, finally? Like, I've been doing this since day one. I've been doing this for years, yet you constantly forget about it. They're a very forgetful people. And I know we do the same, right? When God provides for us, we forget about it, and we're always on to the next thing. Just think about that as human beings for a second. We're always focused on the next thing. When we're young, we're like, I want to get my own place. I want to move out. I want to get an apartment. And then we get into the apartment. We're like, I want a house. I'd like a house to just have my own. And then we get the house and we're like, kitchen needs remodeled, right? And so we got to focus on the kitchen. Once we get the kitchen remodeled, then everything will be okay. And then the kitchen gets remodeled and we look outside and we're like, oh, landscaping needs touched up and it needs done. So we're always on to the next thing. We all, maybe if you're not, I want to get married someday, right? And then you get married and it's like, oh, well that happened, cool. I'd like to have some kids. And then you have kids. And again, we're always on to the next thing. We're just like that. We constantly forget. Maybe it was a thing we were even praying about. Maybe it was a new job we were praying for and we got it. And then we forget about what God did for us. Maybe it was a house that God provided for us, and then we forget. And we're like, well, it was because of the offer we made, right? And we kind of take it for granted. We constantly forget. We have to look back and remember. So yes, there is a time to look back. Here's the time. When we think about God's faithfulness, look back. When we think about God's faithfulness, look back. And so they all cross, 2 million Israelites cross the Jordan River. They all make it across, and then God commands them to do something. And I'm gonna kind of encourage us to do the same as we think about 2018 and moving into 2019. Here's what it says in Joshua chapter 4, starting with verse 1. It says, when all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you and lay them down in a place where you lodge tonight. And so he's like, go get 12 stones and just set up the 12 stones. The 12 because of the 12 tribes of Israel. And it kind of signifies this was the entire nation that he was faithful to. And so it says in verse 4, then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel whom he appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan and take up each upon you a stone. So they go into the Jordan where it was dry and they get these huge stones. These aren't little pebbles. They have to carry them on their shoulders that this might be a sign among you. It might be a sign among you. And when your children ask, because they will ask, right? What's that mean? What's this mean? Not if they ask, when they ask. Here's what you can say. When they ask you, what do those stones mean to you? This implies that because he was so faithful to each tribe and the whole nation, that it had significance on each individual in their family. Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. A memorial forever. So the point of this story was to establish a memorial by which future generations will learn the identity of the people of Israel as the one nation whose God could do wonders, whose God is faithful and keeps his promises. It's not just about remembering. So yes, there is a time to look back, but looking back is not enough. He says, make a memorial, make a sign. He wants us to have something to point to remember what he's done for us. And so we just think of that time in our own life right now where I shouldn't have gotten that job. I shouldn't have gotten that promotion. I shouldn't have been cured from this disease. I shouldn't have made it out from that wreck alive. Our marriage should have never made it. I should have never been freed from my sin or my addiction, but I was. And God was faithful. He kept his promise. It was to help them remember and marvel by saying, look what God did here. And when we experience moments of doubt, moments when we're not sure if we'll get through, moments when we feel alone in the dark without hope, we can point to that and say, look back, look at what God did. Something we can hear or touch or see. And this isn't the only time that God had his people do something like this. Remember, again, back in Genesis when Noah and his ark, God's like, the sin of the world is just too great. But I'm going to set apart Noah and his family. I'm going to save the world through them. I'm just going to wipe out the earth. Whether you believe it's true or not, it's a really cool lesson. But after it's all over and he saves Noah and his family, he does something. He makes a covenant with them. He says, each time after it rains, I want you to look in the sky, there's going to be a rainbow. And you're going to remember that that's my sign to you that I will never flood the earth again. We see that to this day, right? We see rainbows to this day. And in the New Testament, when Jesus is at the end of his life, and he's up in the upper room having Last Supper with his disciples, he's about to be killed and arrested and betrayed. And he takes some bread and he says, I want you to take this bread because it represents my body that's going to be broken for you on the cross. Then he takes the wine. He says, I want you to remember this wine. And I want it to represent my blood that's going to be shed for you on the cross. And he says, I want you to do this in remembrance of me. So he doesn't just say, remember me, look back at what I did. He actually gives them something by which to do so. And 2,000 years later, what do? Every week, we gather here and we take communion. We remember what God has done for us through Jesus, that he has saved the world through Jesus. We all have memorials in our own life, right? We all have things that we kind of point to. Maybe this doesn't mean anything to you. It means a lot to me. It's just a little bat. You see that? You play baseball. I don't play baseball with it. But it's from this weekend. I went to Louisville, and it's when I proposed to my wife, Hannah. And I just remember it by having this bat up on kind of one of our shelves. And I look back, I'm like, oh, that's when we got engaged. That's a really meaningful weekend for me. And so it's just something I kind of look back at. There's also, I also have this from the day I got married. Make sure that stops. Whoa. From the day I got married. And it says, reasons I want to marry you. I don't know how she filled up an entire book, but my wife did. Again, I don't know how she did it, but apparently there are at least 20 reasons. But she handed this to me on our wedding day, and then before we had our big reveal, I was kind of looking at the book and looking at each page, and then I was done. I turned around, and there she was for the big reveal. And so for me, it's just I keep this on our nightstand, and I remember how God's been faithful through Hannah and just what she means to me, and it's just something I remember, and I kind of set this up, and I see it every day. I also, kind of from this year, I kind of keep a journal. And maybe you don't think journaling's cool or having a diary is cool, but it just helps me remember how God's been faithful just in each week as I reflect on each week and each day. And these are just very meaningful to me. I'll have 3 journals after this year that I kind of I'll set on a shelf, and I'll remember that through the journals. So I kind of write down how God's been faithful. Maybe the memorial for you is, maybe it's a place. When we break ground on this new campus, we're going to look over at the high school. You're going to be able to see it. You're like, remember when we met in the high school? Remember how God was faithful to us and having a building that we can call home, right? Maybe it's a place, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a child that you prayed for that you weren't expecting, or you weren't expecting that you were able to have, and you prayed for it and it happened. So you point to that child. Maybe it's a verse that kind of marked this year, or kind of marks your life for you in the Bible. Maybe it's a word, maybe it's an item. Again, it's why we buy souvenirs, tickets, and everything else. Maybe it's a journal. You can write down how God was faithful. Maybe it's a song, right? Every couple almost, like, they have their songs, right? When Journey comes on, it's like, oh, that's our song, right? Maybe you don't have a song. Maybe your song could be a slamming screen door, sneaking out late, when your mama don't know, right? T Swift, if you need a song, she kind of gave you one, right? Maybe it's a box. I know some people who have a God box, and so every time God's been faithful, they put something in the God box to remind them that God has been faithful. I don't know what it is for you, but I think it'd be a shame if we just kind of wasted the last 30 minutes and didn't do anything about it. We just let 2018 go by and we don't remember anything by it. So I'm gonna just challenge us with a couple things. You can do one or the other. One could be just pick up that one thing this week, that memorial, that sign. Maybe it's in your house or wherever it is in your office. Just pick it up this week and thank God for how he's been faithful. The second way, remember how they had 12 stones set apart? Maybe make a list of 12 ways that God's been faithful this year, or of 12 people that God's put in your life, or just maybe a mixture of songs, people, just ways that God's been faithful, events. And so you'll have that to look at. And again, do that before you make your New Year's resolution, because I think that could align our hearts and minds and put us in the right mindset as we make those resolutions. And I think we can just really see the heart of God and just how he's been faithful in looking back. And so I think by looking back, it might just be the way forward for a lot of us. And so I just want to challenge you to do that. I'm gonna pray for us, and then thank you guys for having me here. I'll pray for us real quick. God, we just thank you that you have made us so wonderfully complex. And because you made us, you know us. And you know that we are extremely forgetful people, and that we forget every time you've been faithful to us. And God, we're that way. And I don't know why, but you've made us that way. But God, you have set up ways for us to remember how you've acted in our lives, and how we've seen you move in our lives and in the lives of others. God, we thank you that you care very much about just what's around us and things that we can feel and touch and see. And God, you use those things to remind us. We thank you for Jesus, that every week we get to remember it's because of him we have new life. It's because of him that the old is gone, the new has come. It's because of him that we experience grace and love and mercy on a daily basis, God. God, I pray that we would just be faithful back to you, and maybe setting up a memorial or a sign or a way that we can remember what you've done for us in 2018, and we can go into 2019 expectant that you'll do it again, Father. We pray all this in the name of Christ. Amen.
I hope that message will be one that maybe convicts you the next couple of days to think back and look back and see how God was faithful to you in 2018. We got 2 days here left in 2018. So I hope that you'll take some time to think about where God was faithful for you in 2018. I know in my life, there's been a lot of things as I was listening to Brock speak today that really kind of stuck out to me of how God has shown up and been so faithful. And then we get to look ahead, we get to look forward to what is still to come, and trusting God's faithfulness moving into 2019. And so I hope that you'll come back next Sunday. We're going to kick off the new year with a challenging message, an inspiring message, I hope, for you as you begin the new year that maybe is different than what you've heard before. And so I hope that you invite someone that you know to come back with you next year, right? And you get perfect attendance if you show up next Sunday too. So, all right. So I hope that you have a great end of this year and the beginning of a new year. We love you guys. We'll see you next Sunday.